it's funny. Speaking of stepping in, I feel like as the companies progress, we are moving towards this AI-based world. It is taking out all these legacy companies, but at the same time, it feels like even as this happens, these super advanced companies keep running into some of the most basic challenges that have defined IT for decades, well over a half century now. You know, we saw last week some security issues. Both Snowflake and Hugging Face saw some security access breaches last week. This should be interesting discussing this as I'm surrounded literally by a bunch of Snowflake people. But be that as it may, it was an interesting challenge in that, I feel like both companies ran into the same problem. They're both seen as these cutting edge companies that are making things very easy for customers. And in this case, they provided too much flexibility in that they gave their customers the ability to define access and security in ways that honestly a company like SAP or Oracle would never do. SAP would have gone the other direction and they would have shoved multi-factor authentication down your throat and said there's only one way to do this and we can't risk doing it any other way for our own brand's reasons. And a company like Snowflake would be like, no, we're going to provide you with all the options and all the governance options for you to make your own choices to build out your warehouse. And this is where we ended up getting to, where we started seeing some big security breaches that had to be figured out.
So I think this is one of the most interesting, uninteresting topics we can talk about. Uninteresting because security breaches happen all the time, and uninteresting because this was barely a breach, right? This was that this wasn't that somebody penetrated them; it was that they had their clients using weak protocols or weak approaches. It's interesting though for two reasons, I think. The first is that it speaks to a problem that we almost never talk about when it comes to security, and that is how piss poor passwords are as a security approach. And all of the efforts, whether that's multi-factor authentication or whether that's passcodes, now have all struggled to find true adoption. This is using a password is so entrenched. And going back to something you said earlier, that we in tech are this sliver, and that the vast majority of the world is, doesn't see the world like us. It is staggering how many people just have incredibly weak passwords. And so I think we've got this really big macro problem of that's going to continue as we become more and more digital. It's going to be an issue. And if you're a CIO, this has to be something you're really thinking about. But it's also interesting for another reason, and that I've long said that being a CIO within a tech company is the worst job in the world, because you're surrounded by people who think they know more than you. And maybe second to that is being a tech company who sells to really smart technical people and believes that those are the people that are going to have solid security, right? Because these are both technical products selling to a technical audience who you would expect are smart enough to employ MFA and other approaches. And this is where they kind of got bitten in the rear, because they trusted an audience that they felt were going to be smart enough to leverage these tools and to sort of roll their own. And you talk about SAP and Oracle. Well, they won't ever do that, because their users are business users who don't know any better. So of course they have to shove it down their throat. And so I think it's sort of ironic that you saw this, but